Hi Year 7, we're going to show you how to do your first Animorph. So you can see we're going to be merging a seal and a penguin together. So it looks something along these lines. We're going to jump over to Photoshop. Your teacher should have provided you with the files needed to complete this task. I'm going to locate them and open them in Photoshop. I'm going to say File, Open, and you'll need to locate them and see where they are. Okay, so I'm going to click on the penguin, hold down Control or Shift and click on Sealion, and they should both open in Photoshop. Now I'm also assuming that you've done the Photoshop basics, so you know your way around, a little bit about Photoshop, the menus, the toolbox and things like that. So I will be describing them as I go along. You can see I've got my layers palette here. Okay. If for some reason there are some big panels or palettes open like this, if you double click on them, it will shrink them, and we really want to just be seeing our layers palette for this. And you can see my penguin is up here as well. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is cut out the penguin's head. Okay, so we're going to cut it out around here. What we're going to be using is the quick selection tool. So as we know, the selection tools whereby we select a part of an image to do something to it live up here to the top of the toolbox. So you can see quick selection tool. Okay, I'm going to zoom in a little bit using my mouse wheel and holding down Alt. You can do that as well without a mouse by clicking on the magnifying glass down here. Okay, you can see the magnifying glass down here, a little plus symbol, clicking, and a little minus symbol, and I need to be holding down Alt. Okay, to zoom in and out. So that's the magnifying tool. So back to my quick selection tool. Now you'll see how it's going to work. Now I'm going to start clicking around my animal. Okay. Now don't worry if it starts picking up some of the background. We can go and work on that to delete that. Okay. So I'm just hovering around the edges of my penguin. Okay, I'm going to bring that down here. Now I'm holding the mouse. Okay, I'm holding the mouse at the moment. That's gone a bit too far, but that's okay. I'll just zoom out. Okay, so that there, what I was doing was adding the selection. I'm going to then switch to the minus, and I'm just going to do little clicks to a minus or delete from my selection, as you can see. And you can hear me going click, click. Okay, and we're just going to tidy up those edges. If I go too far, I can always add to it as well. Now you might find as well that you either have a really big brush or really small brush. You can see mine up here is set to 14, so you can make it bigger or smaller if you need to get into areas. So I'm just going to minus a little bit more from along here because we only really want the head. Okay, it's important though to select some of the neck because we're going to need that to blend. So you can keep plussing and minusing until you're happy with your selection. Okay, I am happy with that. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to move this penguin's head over onto our Sealion file. To do that, you get the Move tool, which is the one that lives at the very top of the toolbox, and I'm going to click and hold. I'm going to drag, 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 drag up onto Sealion, and I'm going to pop it over here. Okay. So now we're just going to zoom in. Now we're going to have to start resizing and rotating this little guy here by pressing Control T. You would have learned that in your Photoshop basics. So I'm just going to make him a bit smaller. Now we don't hold down Shift because we want to keep the proportions. Okay, a little bit smaller. Let's see where he's going to fit well. That's looking pretty good there. I'm just going to use my arrow keys to move back and forth. Maybe a touch smaller. Okay, that's looking good. Now to apply the transformation, you press Enter. So just to recall that again, to transform, you press Control T. To apply the selection, you press Enter. Okay, you can see we do have some work to do. What we might do first is I'll show you how to get rid of the background. Okay, I'll show you how to get rid of the background of the sea lion. I'm just going to turn my penguin off for a moment. We want to delete, you can see what we need to delete here. Okay, you can see what we need to delete here. We're going to use what we call the clone. I actually think I prefer this transformation because it means there's less work for us to do in terms of deleting. So I think I'm a little bit more happy with that one there. Control, and I press enter. Okay, so we're going to start deleting some of that background. So I might go, okay. So we're going to use something called the clone tool. So the clone tool lives sort of midway in the toolbox. You can see the clone stamp tool. Now how the clone stamp tool is going to work is it's going to take a picture of something. So if I press Alt, you can see it turns into a little crosshair. Hold down Alt. So what it's going to do, if I click here, you'll see what it's about to do. So what it's doing is taking a picture of where I press Alt and then replicating what's underneath. So have a look. If I just be a bit cheeky here and press Alt over the eye, you can see it's going to clone my eye to another part of the image. I'm not going to click there, but just to show you how it's working. So what we want to do is sort of clone the background. And we want to get rid of that seal. So I'm going to take a picture of the clean sky and start working that over my seal. So we can't see my seal anymore. Now, just in case your brush isn't set the same as mine, just double check. We want hardness to be all the way to 0, which means a nice, soft, fluffy brush. Okay, size you can change depending on your needs. I also set my opacity to 35, which means if it was 100%, what it's going to do is transfer 100% of the pixels in one click. By changing to opacity around sort of 30, you can have a little play with it. It does it gradually, which means you can blend it a little bit more. So it doesn't look too much like you've just copied and pasted the background, which is essentially what we're doing. So I'm taking bits and pieces of clean sky. It's looking pretty good. At this stage, I'm going to put on my penguin and see where we're at. Okay, great. I'm going to keep my penguin there now because I can use him to see where I still need to do in the background. So back to my sea lion layer, I'm going to keep cloning. Now the beauty of this, it's not going to go over my penguin because my penguin's sitting on top. Okay, looking pretty good. It's looking pretty good. Okay, you can go and be a little bit fussier than I have. Right, we're getting there. I'm just going to do something quickly which you may not have to do, but I can see there's a little bit of mess that's hanging around this area. I'm just going to get my eraser tool. I'm going to set the opacity to 100% because I want it to work. And I'm going to go to my penguin layer, and you can see I had a bit of mess that came from my penguin layer. And I might set that brush to 100% hardness because I want a nice hard edge when I'm deleting. Okay. Looking good. Now the last step we've got to do here is the blending between the two animals. So we're going to fade one animal into the next. We're going to be doing something in the coming tutorials called a mask, and we're going to start doing that now. There is a little icon down here called, which is add layer mask. I'm going to add that. Now what that does is lets me delete from an image, but also put back if I make a mistake. Okay, so it only works in black and white. It might make more sense when I show you. So I'm just going to, with my eraser tool, have a look at that. I just deleted some of my penguin. Now you can see over here in the layers palette a little black area. That means I've deleted it. The beauty of this tool is that if I swap the color to black, where you can see my mouse is here in the bottom left, if I swap it to black by clicking this little arrow and I click back over, it actually paints it back. Because sometimes in Photoshop you go too far, and if you use the eraser tool, it's permanent. So the beauty of using a layer mask is that you can use black and white to add or remove. Okay, but there is a problem with what I just did. If I'm trying to blend, you can see it's a very, very hard edge. A very hard edge. So I'm just going to press Ctrl Z. Instead, I'm going to go up here and I'm going to change my brush to as soft as possible. So we go down to 0. And I'm going to change, let's just see what that does. Okay, so you can see it's a fluffy edge, great. Now we're just going to do it a little bit more gradually. So I'm going to change my opacity, which means transparency. I'm going to change that down to say around 38. Just means I'm going to have to click more, but it means I can do it gradually. So I don't know if you can hear me click, 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 click. Okay, lots and lots of clicks. And now what we want to do is fade away that hard line. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Now you can see lovely fading. I want it to look like a nice gradation between the two. Now I am going to change my brush to a smaller brush, excuse me, so I can get up a little bit closer to those edges without deleting too much of my penguin. Even smaller now, so I can get nice and close to those edges so that he doesn't disappear. Okay, you can see I've zoomed in. I'm going to zoom out with my mouse wheel. Let's just do one more, a little bit bigger, and fade that out a little bit more. Okay. Zooming out, we now have a sea lion cross penguin. To sum up what we did, we cut out the head, we moved it from another file into this file. We used the clone stamp tool in order to delete the rest of the sea lion's head from the background by moving the waves all the way across. We used the clone stamp. Then to have that lovely blend between the two animals, we created a layer mask, okay, which works using the eraser tool. Black and white will add or remove. As I said, the beauty of it is that we can always put it back if we've gone too far, or you can take it away once again. So that was the layer mask, and in doing so we used the eraser tool, and we made sure we used a lovely soft brush with fluffy edges, so hardness all the way to 0, and then opacity around the 30 to 40% mark. Okay, to save that work and submit it to your teacher, you will go to File, Save a Copy, and we are going to ask that you submit it as a JPEG. So you save it with your first dot last name JPEG and you submit that online. Looking forward to seeing your work, guys. Thank you.